Welcome to the Draw Shop's Get Genius podcast, where we talk to today's business influencers to pick their brain and pull out their genius. It's time to get genius.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another Get Genius episode. Today, I am talking to Joe Kashurba, and Joe Kashurba is he actually advises and mentors other freelance web designers and digital agency owners, and he primarily focuses on how to develop and scale their business. He started his own freelance web design business in high school and turned it into a digital agency with a virtual team and clients all around the world, going from charging $150 for a website up to $30,000 per website and even more. And managing six-figure digital advertising budgets for some of the largest manufacturing and construction companies. So he's got quite a bit of experience when it comes to building these type of businesses. So we're going to talk a lot about how to do that, how to build your agency if you currently are doing that. And I think the thing is that you don't have to be a web designer or have a digital agency, but there's a lot of us that provide service, whether we have a business already or there's some other type of freelance work that we're doing. There's some really great advice on how to build that business and what to think about that you might not be thinking about. We'll talk a little bit about AdWords, paid advertising, working with a virtual team, how to do that successfully, some project management software, what I use, what he uses, advice for young entrepreneurs. Some of us are young entrepreneurs ourselves. Some of us, like me, have children that are approaching that mindset of, I don't want to work for anyone. I'm going to have my own business like you. So what kind of advice to give to them and for those that have their own businesses already? There's a lot of cool strategies and pieces of advice that he gives that I hadn't thought about, which was really cool. We also talk about, what it's like for competition that does some things similar to what you do, but they're the cheaper version. Some things like that. So that kind of stuff was super interesting to me, and I liked his advice on that. So make sure you listen out for that. And of course, you'll learn how to find out more information about him and get access to his free 90-minute webinar. Well, you'll learn a ton more information even beyond this interview. So I hope you enjoy. Hello, Joe, and thank you so much for talking with me today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, this is going to be pretty cool because we're going to talk about a bunch of things that I don't think we've talked about a ton on this podcast. So I'm excited to really dive in and learn a lot from your experience. Which just leading in, can you give us kind of the background of how you started your business and what led you to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started when I was in high school, and my first entrepreneurial endeavor was I had a group of friends that had a band in high school, and they were playing at this one restaurant, and I filmed them playing at the restaurant and then sold videotapes of them playing to their parents. So that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor. And then from that, I had the idea of doing a video production business and trying to get more opportunities for videography and video editing and things like that. And I never ended up getting any of those video production clients, but I figured out how to build a website for that business. And then people started coming and needing websites. And so that video production business sort of morphed into a web design business in high school. And then it was something I did all through high school and then through college on the side. And then at the end of college, I was involved in a startup company that sort of fell apart at the end of college. I was hoping for it to be my main thing after college. And so it fell apart. And then I ended up graduating with no job lined up and no startup, while all my friends were getting jobs at Amazon and Oracle and places like that.
Oh,
and so
wow.
Yeah, it was sort of it was exciting in college. I had this startup company, and I thought I was real cool, and then graduated and had nothing lined up. Had to move back in with my parents, and just had this freelance web design business that I had to really focus on, and that's when it became a full-time thing.
So even before college, how did you teach yourself how to build websites?
Yeah, actually, what happened was my sister. I was always interested in programming, and my sister got me for Christmas a Dummy's Guide to Programming, and it had like different chapters for different programming languages, and one of them happened to be HTML. And so when I was trying to figure out how to build a website for this video production business I was starting to do, that's where I first looked. And so I started learning HTML from this Dummy's Guide that my sister had bought me, and that's really how I started teaching myself how to build websites.
Okay, and so then you were selling websites, $300 websites, and then tell us that story and how you moved up, because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so at the beginning it was I think $300 was actually the second website I built. The first one I built I charged $150 for.
Okay.
But I always use the line that I went from selling $300 websites to selling $30,000 websites.
Yeah.
And so at the beginning it was just a few $100s and everything, and it was a slow progression up and sort of a deliberate process of trying to increase my prices. And it really started in college when I had like, it was finals week or something, and I was super busy, and there was this potential client that was interested in the website, and I really didn't have time for it. So, at that time I was charging, a few $100s, and I just made up this crazy price of $1,800 because I didn't really have time for the project.
Yeah.
And they ended up buying. And so then I had to scramble to try to get it done and everything. But I realized then that I wasn't charging nearly enough. And so from that, I went on this sort of deliberate process of trying to increase my prices. And really, it was a process of increasing my prices deliberately and getting more and more clear about who my ideal clients are, what my specialty was, who I could help the most, and that kind of thing. And so, I kept going until we've done projects as much as $40,000. And that's not all of our projects. Our starting price is around $5,000 to $10,000 anymore, but we've done projects all the way up to that $30,000 or $40,000 price point.
So let's talk about that, because obviously there's got to be tremendous value for somebody to spend that much on their website. And there are many, freelance designers out there. There's a lot of digital agencies out there, but what's the difference? What's the value that you bring that others might not be bringing?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is, targeting different people and solving their problems. So, we work with a lot of manufacturing companies and industrial companies and companies like that are really underserved. So many people do web design or digital marketing, and they sort of try to go after the cool industries, or they try to go after things they think are cool. And what they forget is that there's all these sort of traditional businesses out there, industrial companies, manufacturing companies, construction companies that make a ton of revenue and make a ton of money and are almost sort of ignored by a lot of the service providers because they aren't cool, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was one piece, targeting them was one piece, but a lot of it was, taking the time to understand what was really going on and then coming up with a really unique solution for them. And I'll give an example in a second, but what a lot of people do, what a lot of web designers or digital marketers do is they go in and they try to sell people on all the cool stuff they can do. They're like, hey, we could do all this cool stuff and responsive websites and Facebook ads and blah, blah, blah. And the business owner doesn't really care about any of that because that's just a bunch of technical jargon.
Right.
And they're they care about their their problems and what they're trying to do. And so I'll give you an example. I had one manufacturing company that their problem was that they needed to take all of their product information and they were selling sort of products and materials in Lowe's and Home Depot and stores like that. And all of their product information was not available online or digital. And so they were spending $1 million a year printing out binders to send to the different stores that sold their products.
Wow.
So it's $1 million a year in printing costs.
Wow.
So we had to figure out how could we build an online product catalog that pulled in information from their different warehouses and all this different stuff. And that ended up being about a $40,000 project. And it was because I took the time to really figure out what exactly they needed and how we could solve that whole thing. And $40,000, when somebody says, here's $40,000 for a website, that sounds like a lot. But when they realize that that's saving them $1 million a year in printing costs, it sounds like nothing.
Right, exactly.
And so that's sort of a picture of it.
Yeah. So I feel like there are a lot of freelance designers, and we just talked about this a little bit, but what are some of the other, amongst digital agencies and people wanting to provide this service, what do you find the biggest mistakes are? Because there's obviously a demand for it out there, and there's a lot of businesses out there. What mistakes are they making in terms of them growing their business and their clientele?
Yeah, so the first one, which we already sort of talked about, was figuring out sort of who your ideal clients are and what your specialty is, who you can really help.
Right.
Because so many people just have a generalist approach. I'll do anything for anybody, and then that leads to competing on price and just commoditization, and it's all bad. So that's one piece, and then the second piece is realizing that you need to do marketing. It sounds kind of obvious, but so many web designers or freelancers will talk to me and they'll say, well, I need to get clients consistently. And I say, okay, well, what are you doing on a consistent basis to get clients? And the answer is nothing.
Yeah.
And so if you want clients consistently, then you need to do marketing consistently.
So why do you think that is? And that's like an interesting topic as well, because, there's people out there that they're really good at what they do, whether it's a service they're providing, a product or something. And they don't believe that they need to put the time and the money and the consistency, like you said, into marketing. As a fellow entrepreneur, why do you think that is?
I think that, because I was there for a long time. It took me a long time to figure out, I should actually do marketing.
Yeah.
And I think one piece of it is it's just people have a total misconception about how business works. I think so many people have this idea that they're just going to keep grinding along and their business is going to grow slowly over time, and in 20 years they'll be rich.
Yeah.
And that's really not what seems to happen from everything I've learned about entrepreneurship. It's sort of like your business doesn't work and doesn't grow until you get the marketing right and you get the service delivery right. And when you get everything right, then it can grow really, really, really fast. And so it's more of a sort of a stair step or exponential kind of thing than it is just a slow growing over time as you continue to grind.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a piece of it. And then I think another piece is that especially freelancers, service providers, they almost approach business without a business model. Like I see freelancers that are more, they almost have what I call a hunter-gatherer kind of approach, where they're just sort of going out and if they can find some berries, they're going to pick them. If they can find a buffalo to kill, they're going to do that. And they're just trying to find any opportunity they can find to make some money.
Right.
rather than saying, okay, what's my business model? What am I selling? How am I delivering the services? How am I going to get the clients? What marketing am I going to do? Sort of designing a business model and building that sort of business model machine. It's that shift from thinking like a business owner that's actually going to build a business, as opposed to just going out and trying to take advantage of some opportunity.
Right. Exactly.
Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And I'm such a, obviously I think marketing is everything, and so critical to your business. It's funny, just like there's a lady I go to get my my manicures and pedicures, and I was not visiting with her. I was getting, my nails done with her, and we were just chatting, and she was at this new salon. And then she says, I'm going to be moving to another salon. And I said, why? You just moved to this one. She said, yeah, they just opened it up, and it's a beautiful salon. So great, right in Solana Beach. And I'm like, oh, why are they moving already? And she says, well, the owner doesn't want to spend any advertising dollars. She won't put any ads into the, the little coupon book. She won't put up any signage. She won't do anything, because she thinks it's all going to happen just word of mouth. And word of mouth is great. And it was so funny to me. And I'm just like, wow. And so sure enough, they're going out of business. They lost like 4 employees. And now this lady moved, to another salon. And you see that happen with people, because they just, like you said, they're kind of just so focused on, which is good to be focused on what you're providing, the service and everything. But there's so many different parts when you're a business owner. There is the marketing, there is the, how do you keep your clients? How do you keep your team happy? How do you build it? There's so many different pieces, and people really do forget and just go, well, I'll get to that in time, or I don't have the money now. As soon as I have this many clients, then I'll spend money on the advertising and marketing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that sort of putting the cart before the horse. That if I once I get to this level, then I'll spend money on marketing. Yeah. And also the same thing, like, how much money do you put in to set up a salon like that or something, but then not put some money into marketing? Right. And I think another piece of it is that I think our society sort of trains people, like in school and everything, that making mistakes and failing is a bad thing, and so marketing, it involves a lot of testing and experimentation and failing. And so I think sometimes people are so afraid, like, what if I spend that money on this ad and it doesn't work? And they think that would be a bad thing, when really that's what you need to do to test and get it right. Right. And so true. I was talking to somebody one time, and they were talking about how they had spent like $500 on this one ad, and then this was somebody who's making a lot of money, driving a really nice car, had a really big house, like somebody who can easily afford to spend $500 on an ad, and their wife was like totally freaking out, like, what if that $500 doesn't return anything, or aren't you crazy for spending this $500? And it was just this mindset thing, like, it's okay to spend money on all this other stuff, on the car, on the house, on the business, on all this stuff, but $500 on advertising, that's like, maybe we were scammed, or maybe that's not going to work. It's just a weird mindset thing. It is. So I have a question that I wanted to ask you, because I think that we probably have a similar situation in that, we do our business, the Draw Shop. We do custom animation videos. So whether it's cartoon, it's whiteboard, it's all live artists doing custom videos. And sometimes we get potential clients that say that don't work with us, because they say, well, we're going to go with the, it's like the do-it-yourself software. So we can just do it ourselves. And I will tell you, we have a pretty large percentage of those people who have went out and tried it, and then they'll come back and work with us because they'll get frustrated. But that's still a competitor. Even though they're doing something different, it's still a competitor. And I would imagine you have the same thing in terms of working with somebody who's building a website, right? Or there's those do-it-yourself style, build your own website. So how do you
how do you deal with that type of competition, or that kind of, how do you respond to people like that are saying, well, I want to do this instead. I'm going to do it myself because it's cheaper?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's, anytime I'm working with freelancers or any, agency owners, that's a big one that comes up. I think one, part of it is, like you mentioned, just, some people are going to go with the cheapest option, and some of them may be back when it doesn't work out. But I think a lot of it comes, I think the one sort of mistake people make is that they focus too much on how do you convince somebody to go with you instead of that alternative, as opposed to how can we do the marketing in the right way that we get more of the right people.
Yeah.
And I think it's about creating the marketing in a way that the marketing needs to talk about the results and the value that you're providing, and then attract the people that want the results and want the value, and not that want the cheapest option. And so for instance, I've seen this a couple times with web designers where they'll tell me, I'm targeting this industry and nobody in that industry ever wants to pay very much, and they always fight us on price and all this stuff. And then I'll look at their website, and their website will say, we build cheap websites. Or, the emails to their email list will be, call us today and get a big discount on your website. And so they're getting all these people that want cheap websites and want discounts on their websites because that's the message that they're putting out into the market.
Right.
So I think that's a big piece of it. How can you take your marketing and make it more and more and more focused on the results and the value so it attracts the right people?
Yes, exactly. So speaking of which, there's a lot of people are getting their leads through Google AdWords and doing paid advertising. So obviously your messaging has to be pretty clear if you're trying to attract, pretty clear to the person you're trying to attract. What kind of tips or advice can you give in terms of how your messaging is speaking to them?
Yeah. So one thing one very specific tip for Google AdWords specifically, because we do a lot of AdWords, is, I found one of the keys to AdWords is to actually put your price or your starting price right in the ad, so that you don't get clicks from all the people that are looking for a cheaper solution.
Yes. Yeah.
So you create an ad that has a starting price in it. The ad talks about the results and the value, and that results in the right people clicking on your ad in the first place. So I think that's a good tip.
Right. No, that is great. Kind of weed out the people. Then, and you may even be, and I'm sure you can attest to this, you may be spending more dollars for those type ads, but it ends up working out in the end because you're getting very qualified leads.
Exactly. I found that that's the key with Google AdWords. Everybody wants, how can I come up with some keywords that will give me cheaper clicks and stuff like that? But really, it's a matter of how can I get my ad in front of the very best people. And as long as you're in front of the really best people, the cost per click almost doesn't matter.
Exactly. So true. It's the same with social media. When you think about the followers, people can pay for a ton of likes, but if those people aren't engaging and aren't really interested, and it's just because you have the number of likes, it's not going to matter. Yes.
Yeah. And that's it almost relates back to what we talked about before about doing marketing consistently. And, people almost go in with this approach that, I'm going to do some Facebook, I'm going to do all these different things, and I'm going to get some likes. And they're not really focused on what actually matters, which is the getting of the clients and the making of ROI.
Right. Exactly. Now we do have an in-house team, but we also have a virtual team, and most businesses that I know have virtual teams because that's just the way the world is now. And with technology, we can literally, have employees in London or wherever. What are some tips though that you have? Because I imagine, especially if you're a freelance designer or if you're doing this type stuff, talent can be found all over the world. You don't have to be right in your own city. What are your tips though for building a successful and working with a virtual team?
Yeah, that's, I love the virtual strategy. I remember when I sort of first started to get to the point where I was too busy. I had my first $10,000 month in my web design business and realized that I'd spent way too many hours and it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
And so I had to do something. And I saw all the people who had people I knew who had successful web design agencies, but had big offices with big teams and stuff like that. And I saw how they had grown their revenue, but not their profit, because they were having to pay all this payroll and everything. And so I made this decision that I wanted to have the leanest possible team and business as I could. So in terms of strategies, I think the biggest thing is that you need to get really, really clear on what task or what role the virtual person is going to fill.
Yeah.
I think, if you have an office and you're bringing somebody in that's going to sit next to you all day, you can sort of, hire them and sort of, show them, hey, go ahead and do this and sort of that kind of thing. But when somebody's virtual, or maybe they're in another time zone or something, it needs to be really clear. You need to figure out, I'm bringing on this person that's going to do this one phase of the projects, or this person is going to manage this particular thing, and make it really, really clear. And I think when I see people who've tried to bring on virtual team members and it doesn't work, and they're telling me, how do you find good people? Everybody I find is terrible. It usually turns out to be that the person was not clear enough with that person that they brought on about exactly what their role was and what phase of the project they were doing and that kind of thing. So I think that's really key.
I love that you're saying that, because I work that way myself. I want to be extremely clear, even when it comes to meetings, I want to be extremely clear with, okay, what are my marching orders now? What is each person in charge of, and what are they going to execute on? And it has to be super clear. We do that. We're the same with our virtual team, is that there's certain people, and these are the only things that they are responsible for, and they are in their lane and they're not crossing over, because then there's no confusion. I mean, they're going to interact with each other, but there's one person that's in charge of these certain things. And we'll do that using, we use Trello just to, keep the tasks and everything like pretty organized. And of course there's Slack as well. What kind of tools do you use with your team to keep things, to manage those projects?
Yeah, I've tried all kinds of different things. The one I ended up really liking was Asana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Asana is the main thing. We use 17 Hats also for managing a lot of the operations of the business, but in terms of team member communication, Asana is my favorite.
Asana is great. I've worked with Asana. Our team for projects with clients uses Basecamp, which is it's kind of similar to Asana, I think, based on my experience. But Asana is a great one.
I think, Basecamp always looked a lot better for working with clients that needed to maybe interact with the system.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. There's so many out there, and it does matter what kind of business you're in as well, in terms of what project management software you're going to use. So what's for somebody who's, even in high school, because I mean, there's, it seems like most of the entrepreneurs I speak with they kind of had something going on even as a young kid that showed that entrepreneurial spirit and character within them, whether it was, doing their buying candy and selling it for a higher price, going out and marketing to their neighbors on all the things that they could do. And then actually, like, my husband was mowing lawns and then ended up turning that into a business at a really young age. I think he was in high school and actually sold the business, and then had hired on some helpers and then sold the business. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So it's like, people just have these experiences that kind of show early on that this is where their head's at. They're already about creating their own businesses. What advice do you have for a young person, like a teenager right now who is already thinking, I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to work and build my own dream.
Yeah, absolutely. My always my go-to advice for people is that they need to get into business and start learning, rather than waiting for that brilliant, Facebook level idea. I think that people underestimate how much there is to learn about business and marketing and that kind of thing, and you're better off to sort of get into any business rather than waiting for some really unique idea to come along.
Right. How would you say, what's the way to, and I don't even know if there's like a really good answer for this, but sometimes it takes people years, sometimes they know at a really young age what it is that's going to light them up. What is it, the business that they should be going into? How can they find that passion, if you will, to do the thing that they were meant to do? How does somebody even find that? Or do you think that's just something that comes with time?
Yeah, I think that comes with time, and I don't even, I feel like with myself, I'm not even sure if I figured that out for myself.
Yeah.
I think I think if you wait to figure that out, or if you wait to get that perfect idea before you actually do anything, you'll probably never do anything.
Right.
And so you need to find something that you can get excited about in the short term, and you can get your hands dirty with, and run with it and see what happens next.
Yeah. Do you work with a coach, like an executive coach or mentor?
I've done all kinds of things. I've had coaches. I've had all kinds of mentors. I'm a part of a few sort of high-level mastermind groups where we get together a few times a year now. That's been incredibly important. I think to my success has been finding people above me and being comfortable in those situations where I'm the least successful person in the group, or that kind of thing,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it's just, you get so, you can easily get stuck into the day-to-day business that you're running, and you sometimes aren't learning other things that are going on, and you need to constantly bring that into your business. I'm such a huge advocate for high-level, groups. Not too many. I know there's some people that are just like every other day they're at a new seminar or something like that, and that can get overwhelming, and then you're actually never really have the time to bring it into your business. But yeah, I think it's so important to do that. What are some books that have greatly influenced you and your career?
Let's see. One of the books I always recommend to people is Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz.
Oh, okay.
He basically talks about how everybody has a sort of an identity or a self-image, and that it's very hard for people to do things in the real world that are not in alignment with their self-image or their identity. And so he talks about in that book about doing affirmations and different things to sort of redesign your self-image and redesign your identity, so that you can have the self-image and the identity of the things that you want to do out in the real world.
Right.
And so that's really one that I think everybody should read that and go to work. Go to work trying to develop the right self-image and the right identity, because it's, I think, probably more important than a lot of the marketing tactics and sales strategies and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. What's it like for someone to work with you once they come to, they're wanting to build their own agency? What level are they usually at? Is it various levels? What's it like?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with everybody from people who were, had full-time jobs at agencies and were looking to, maybe they'd done a couple freelance projects and they were looking to go full-time with the freelance business and turn that into their own agency, all the way up to people. We've worked with people that were already making 7 figures in their agency. But the thing that's universally the case with anybody that we work with is that they're really looking to switch from that sort of hunter-gatherer going out and just looking for any random opportunities to having a real solid business model. And so that's what we work on. We work on what are they going to specialize in. We work on productizing their offers and actually setting pricing so that it's not just shooting from the hip in terms of pricing. It's actually, we have these productized offers, and then we work on the marketing piece of getting some sort of a consistent marketing in place so that they can get clients consistently and reliably rather than sort of scrambling all the time or trying to do a million different things to pick up a client here and there.
Right, exactly. And are you like a team of different advisors, or how are you kind of set up?
It's primarily people are working primarily with me.
Okay.
We're building a community, and I'm looking to bring on some other people, but primarily they're working either one-on-one with me or with me via a group.
Awesome. Well, I'd love our listeners to be able to find out more about you and what you're up to. And I think, we actually do have we have an audience of those that are freelancers, that have digital agencies and all that good stuff. Where can they find more information about you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to joekashurba.com and get in touch with me that way. And there's a information on there about a free webinar that we do periodically. It's a great it's a 90-minute webinar with a ton of value and actionable information in there that's worth taking a look at.
Awesome. Well, we'll put a link to that in our show notes and blog post. This was awesome. So many good tips and pieces of advice. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you, Joe.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's Get Genius. You can learn more about The Draw Shop at www.thedrawshop.com, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Your home for kick-butt custom whiteboard marketing videos. Your ideas come to life. Thanks for listening. Please share, comment, and make any suggestions for future Genius guests.